that they allow us to bring our emotion to God.
Yeah.
This is something that I think goes back to Athanasius, probably even before him, but the church father Athanasius wrote a letter to a younger disciple about how the Psalms reflect the full range of emotions that we have as human beings. And one of the things that I've really been struck by with the Psalms is the lament, and the fact that lament is actually the primary type of psalm, or it's the most used type that we have in the Psalms, which I think tells us a lot about life. And I remember being back at Jessup, my final year, 2008, 2009. My mom got diagnosed with cancer and then ended up dying that year, my final year here at Jessup when I was a student. And I was kind of still early on in my formational process of understanding Scripture. But one of the things that I had picked up from the wider kind of American evangelical complex is this idea that strong faith is always kind of a triumphalist faith, and the way you show your devotion for God is you're always kind of happy, and that whole deal that I think gets communicated 1,000 different ways to us in church. I've been interested in kind of following how lament is even handled in evangelical churches. I attended one really big mega church one time at a conference just to see it. And they actually happened to be talking about lament, which shocked me. But what was so kind of jarring is that the worship was so kind of loud and brash and triumphalist. It didn't match the tenor of the sermon in any way. And then also the pastor kind of went there with the lament, but got it's almost like we go there, but we can't really linger there. We got to instantly run to God is great. I'm strong.
Rejoicing. Yeah.
All my problems are gone. You know, kind of announcement. And so I think about that, how our worship could be like, our worship, I think, is impoverished in many ways when we don't linger in lament. And so I just love to hear kind of your thoughts about the lament psalms, because it's one of the reasons where I really appreciate the Psalter so much. Now kind of looking back on that, and not only for myself, but I see Jesus as the model of lament. So when I lament, I'm lamenting with Jesus, whose final words on the cross were, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The opening of Psalm 22, which is, that's a lament. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about.
Yeah, well, let me start with Psalm 22 then, since you mentioned that, because I think one of the things that lament invites us to do is not just to bring our full and honest emotions to God, but I think it even invites us to bring our incorrect feelings to God.
That's
because good. Jesus was not forsaken. The psalmist was not forsaken, really. And the psalmist knows that later in the psalm, but that is how they felt.
Yeah.
And so it invites us to say, God, where are you? You are not around. You're absent. And yet we know God is there. But we're allowed to express how we feel, even if we know it's not correct. So Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? The psalmist knows that God's not really far, because if we go down to verse 24, for he has not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted one. He has not hidden his face from him, but he has listened to his cry for help.
Yeah.
So that simultaneous, we're able to express how we feel even when we know in reality it's theologically incorrect.
That's good.
I think that's beautiful. One psalm that I've been reflecting on a lot, it's a lament. It's Psalm 13.
Yeah, I love that psalm.
It's a parade example of a lament. I use it in class to show it has these various components that are classic for laments. Yeah. So if you don't mind, it's only 6 verses.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll read it. I love it. And it's short enough that I think even if you're just listening, you'll be able to follow along. Yeah. So it starts off with a complaint, and then it's going to move to a request, to a petition, to the prayer part, and then it ends in the statement of trust. So listen for those parts. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? So that's the psalmist's complaint. And notice that the psalmist is complaining against 3 different individuals there. God, God's not around. Himself, he's wrestling with his own thoughts. And then there's the enemies. So sometimes laments will only speak about one of those, but here it's...
You got all 3.
You got all 3, yeah. The I, thou, and they. And then verse 3, here starts the petition. Look on me and answer, Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. And my enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. And then here comes the statement of trust. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. Now, I think some people misunderstand the relationship between the trust and the lament. And they think that something either needs to change before we make this statement of trust. And so scholars will propose all sorts of changes to the text.
Right.
They'll say, oh, this trust isn't a current statement of trust. It really
like
is
a
future vow. I will do
like
this.
They're almost like in the future speaking about it, like after they've brought their Thanksgiving or something.
Once you answer my prayer, God, then I'm going to trust you like this. And then some people propose that maybe in the temple, a prophet or a priest would have given a divine oracle of God assuring salvation, and then the psalmist responds with a statement of trust, even though there's no evidence for that at all.
Right.
And I think people are just uncomfortable with the idea that we can have both lament and trust at the same time held in tension.
I like
and
that.
we don't always have to move so quickly from lament to the trust.
Yeah.
Like that mega church pastor is like, okay, here's some lament, but praise.
Right.
Or, it's been, you know, I've heard it recently where people say, yes, lament, but then we want you to move to the praise.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
we're very uncomfortable with lingering in lament.
Right.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and we can do both at the same time. And I think when really hard things happen, like you experienced, we shouldn't be pushed away from that lament too quickly.
Yeah.
We should live in that tension and let God heal us in that tension. Yeah.
You know, a couple thoughts. One thing that struck me when you were talking about the two things happening at the same time, a great example of this in a text is Psalm 119, which it just struck me freshly. I mean, you always think, oh, this is a wisdom psalm, massive acrostic of loving the law and everything. But it's like a back and forth between almost like this reflective, meditative trust and confidence in God's Torah to, oh my gosh, I'm surrounded. Where are you, God? And this is, and you're kind of like, whoa, this is all over this guy's all over the place. Yeah. But you kind of realize, like, actually, this is like real life.
It is. I was going to say, don't most of us usually feel these feelings all at once?
Yeah. So that's really, really good. What do you think? I don't want to overly psychologize us all, but our inability or our fear, apprehension about lingering and lament, do you think it says something maybe about what we believe about God? Like, we need to get God off the hook, or like because our ideas of God are such that we're uncomfortable with a God that we can't explain why God would do certain things or allow certain things to happen. It just seems to me that we really have some felt need that we've all, or many of us have maybe been conditioned to have in church, to rush through the lament, because it leaves us in a space where we have lots of questions and no answers.
And it makes us feel like maybe the gospel is ineffectual.
Yeah.
If we linger in lament.
Yeah.
And that's not good theology either, right? Because we're told that things are going to be messy and we're going to suffer amidst the joy and rejoicing.
Yes.
This side of Christ's return. So, I think that's an unfortunate theme in current theology for sure.
And I think it also, one other thought I had is maybe it kind of affects our ability, depending on the spaces, the faith communities we inhabit, it really affects the ability of ourselves, our community, to be good embodiments of the gospel to other communities who are marginalized or really struggling. So people who, like, they read the lament psalms and they're like, this is my daily reality. If you're part of a community that doesn't have space for lament, well, what are you going to do with somebody whose daily reality is a lament psalm, or a community whose story in many ways for a long time is a lament psalm? It's going to make it really hard for us to have space for other people.
Right. And the Bible's made space for those people in these psalms.
Yeah.
And not only have they made space for the lament, but if we look at these, like the one I just read, we don't know who these enemies are. We don't know why the psalmist is wrestling. We don't know the nature of this depression or it's so generalized so as to invite anyone into this space. This is your space. This has been the space of worshipers for hundreds of years all over the world. It's really inclusive in it. and it recognizes that those feelings are real. They're a part of the Christian and Jewish experience.
Yeah, love it. I love it.